Hey guys, we're gonna do something a little bit different today. I pulled the most common candle making business questions of 2025 from Google, YouTube, our own community. Frankly, it's the most common questions I get asked myself all the time as well. There's 12 today that we're gonna address. And real quick, if you're new to the channel, my name is Wade. I'm the owner of Black Tie Barn. On this channel, we talk about candle making, candle business, tips, tricks, and really anything I can to help you start and grow your small business. We also talk about some of the products and things that we offer as Black Tie Barn as well. So if you're interested in any products like our fragrance oils and wicks and dyes and things like that, just check them out on the website, blacktiebarn.com. All right, so let's just jump right in. As I mentioned, the top 12 questions that I've come across in 2025, at least the last several months, as it relates to candle making or candle business. All right, so let's start off with number one. What is the best candle making wax for 2025? I've addressed this question before. I feel like I address it every year. And honestly, there is no best wax. There just really isn't. I can tell you in 2025, some waxes that have really sort of jumped to the top as far as popularity. And I would say that's probably coconut soy blends. And the reason is smooth tops, long burn times, it's trendy. You can market it as a kind of natural type product or natural type wax. So there's a lot of reasons. I would also say it's not quite as finicky as just straight soy wax. So that's a reason why it's so popular in 2025. But in terms of being a best wax, no, that's more of a preference. Best wax is going to mean something different to everyone because it depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a strong cold throw? Are you looking for the strongest hot throw? In other words, the strongest smelling candle? Are you looking for one that colors well? Are you looking for the cheapest or most available? Are you looking for the most trendy? There's so many ways that you can interpret what a best wax is to you. I can tell you at Black Tie Barn, we have the most experience with different types of parasoy waxes, anywhere from a 50-50 parasoy, 70-30. We use straight soy waxes as well in some cases, and we have some experience with coconut soy as well. Those are the ones that we have the most experience ourselves. There are palm waxes, there are beeswax, there's olive oil waxes, there's so many. I would say the most common still in the world is going to be your parasoy waxes, and that's some type of blend of paraffin and soy, and that's because you're getting sort of the best of both worlds. You're getting good long burn times, good aesthetics, good hot throw, typically easier to work with than some of these straight soy waxes. Long story short, there's not a best wax out there. There just isn't. What you need to figure out as a candle maker through your testing is what's the best wax for you. Now here we are talking about how to choose a great wax so that you can make great candles. But just as important as making great candles is showcasing your candles. One way to do that is with killer photos. And that's where today's sponsor, Craftsy, comes in. If you are unfamiliar with Craftsy, they are an online learning platform built for makers, creatives, DIY enthusiasts just like us. It offers thousands of expert-led classes in everything to do with crafting, product photography, sewing, painting, baking, woodworking, even more. So whether you're building a business or exploring just a hobby, Craftsy gives you step-by-step guidance. Craftsy just launched an excellent course called Product Photography at Home. It's taught by Jessica Marquez, a pro who helps makers just like us. And with over 2 hours of lessons, she dives into using natural window light, choosing the right aperture, shutter speed, styling your candles with props, and even nailing post-production edits. Now you might be wondering, why does all this matter? Because in 2025, your product photos are your storefront. Great visuals get clicks, sales, and make your candles stand out in some would call a crowded marketplace. Plus in this video, for example, Jessica shows you how to shoot without expensive gear, just like with what you already have at home. So if you want your candles to shine online, head to the link in the description below, check out Craftsy's Product Photography at Home class, because classes and videos on how to showcase your candles is a perfect complement to your candle making. And of course, for watching this video, they have provided a special offer for all of you. And the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the video description below will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49, valid for new members only. All right, so let's get back to answering some more of your top candle questions. All right, number two is how do you choose the right wick size? Well, wick sizing depends on three most important factors: wax type, jar diameter, and fragrance load, which is the amount of fragrance you have in your candle. Now, most people are using a fragrance load somewhere between 6 and 10%, and usually the amount of fragrance you're adding isn't going to change the wick size unless it's a very viscous oil. So an oil with a lot of cinnamon, a lot of citrus, or just a really heavy oil. The more you add, that can introduce some wicking issues. But there is no universal right size based on a jar size. Nor is there a universal size based on wax type. because it's a combination of those three. Most notable, the ones you need to keep in mind are wax type and jar size. And by size, usually the jar diameter. Now, I should go one step further. The type of jar can make a difference as well. 10 containers will keep heat in more, retain more of that heat, and help a candle burn faster than glass, for example. So you typically can have a smaller wick size in a 10 candle. Ceramic doesn't hold heat as well, so you typically have to go up a size. But these are just sort of general rules, and it's going to vary. So you have to test that yourself. The most important thing is your wax type and your jar diameter. And that is why there's no universal wick charts. I see a lot of people in Facebook groups asking about, like, is there a wick guide? Is there a wick guide? There are tons of wick guides. I never tell people to use them though, because they have no idea what wax type you're using or anything else really. So they can give you estimations. Most wick guides are based on a specific wax they use to create that wick guide. So unless you're using the same exact wax and same diameters and everything, it's not going to be the same for you. So the best thing that wick guides give you is relative differences between the wick sizes. For example, you can see the difference between a CDN 8 and 10, 12, or an Eco 1, 2, and 4, or Premier 725, 735, 750. You can see how they are in relation to one another, but that doesn't help you really determine the right wick size because it doesn't know what wax you're using. So what I like to recommend to people is if you have a wick guide, you can at least get a rough idea of the differences in the sizes, but you're best off, if you have no idea where to start, you're best off getting in one of the groups. You can get on our group, Black Tie Makers group on Facebook, or the Candle Making Work group on Facebook, and you can just ask some others, you know, here's the wax I'm using, here's the jar I'm using, where should I start? And you're going to get a good start, a good starting point, a good recommendation. From that point, make a few testers with a few different sizes near that starting point, and pretty quickly you can determine the right wick size for your application. But there is no universal one. You have to test to find out. All right, why doesn't my candle smell strong when it's burning? Well, that's what we call a hot throw issue. And hot throw is the smell, the strength of that aroma while the candle is burning, as opposed to cold throw, which is just the smell the candle gives off when it's just sitting on the table or sitting on a shelf, not being lit. So hot throw issue is typically a result of three things: possible wrong wick size, not enough fragrance oil or poor fragrance oil, or three, the wax type. So let's break these down real quick. Let's start with the wrong wick size, and I should say wrong wick type and or size, because every wax has a preference sort of on which wick type works best with it. And you really want that right combination of a wick type and size to go with your candle to generate enough heat to vaporize the fragrance oil. Because if it doesn't vaporize, it's never really escaping from the melt pool and the wax, and so you're not really getting any fragrance into the air for anyone to detect or smell it. That's why a lot of people will complain, I can only smell my candle when I'm standing right over it. That's because you're really not getting any of those fragrance vapors into the air, so you're not noticing anything. You need a wick type and size that's hot enough to get that fragrance oil to escape the wax and get into the air for you to smell it. That's why testing is so important. You test for safety, but you also test for performance. Number two was fragrance oil. Now, that can be not enough fragrance oil, although that's usually not the case these days. Most people are using waxes that hold plenty of fragrance oil, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or even higher percentage. And so that's usually not the issue. However, not all fragrance oils are created equally. Fragrance oil quality is really, really important. Are you using fragrance oils that are super high quality, or are you using some that may be significantly diluted by solvents? Now, all fragrance oils are a mixture of several materials, but some of them have stronger components in them, so that can make them stronger. Also, not all fragrance oils are the same. Some components are just naturally lighter than others, and so some fragrance oils are going to be lighter than others, and that's normal. But I would just say invest in quality fragrance oils. There are plenty of companies out there selling quality fragrance oils. If you're new to our brand, that is one of the things that we specialize at Black Tie Barn, is curating fragrance oils. So check our website. We release fragrance oils all the time. We have new releases, new themed releases coming out all the time. I enjoy that part of the process probably more than anything, because I love coming up with the profiles, the scent profiles. They're unique, they're complex. We come up with great names and stories behind them and visuals behind them. So if you haven't tried our fragrance oils yet, I really encourage you to do so. High quality, bold, unique, complex. You will love them. So again, you can find those at blacktiebarn.com. So fragrance oil quality, wick type and size, And then the third one is wax type. And this is probably the most important again. I mean, obviously you have to have good quality fragrance oils. And obviously if your wick candle is not wicked appropriately, it's not going to perform very well. But wax type is a big contributor as well. And the reason for that is we touched on it earlier. All waxes have different pros and cons, different advantages and disadvantages. Soy wax, for example, is not known as being the best for strong fragrance. Doesn't mean you can't get it. It just means it's harder and it's pickier about the fragrance oils that work well. And it generally needs longer for that fragrance to sort of develop in the candle. Whereas paraffin waxes and a few other types, it's pretty easy to get a good strong hot throw as long as it's wicked properly and you're using quality fragrance oils. And then there's a bunch of blends, right? So all of these waxes have pros and cons. Some of them are better at hot throw than others, and some are pickier on fragrance oil than others. Beeswax is another example. It's a fantastic wax for a lot of different reasons, but it's not necessarily the best for strong fragrance throw, and beeswax has its own natural scent, and that will often compete with fragrance oils. So if you're making candles, and no matter what wick size or type you use or which fragrance oils you are using, you are still not getting great hot throw, it could simply be the wax. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And if you need some help, reach out to us, ask questions in the group to other candle makers. Everyone there, it's a great community there to help you out. Number 4, can you use essential oils instead of fragrance oils? Technically, yes. But most essential oils are not designed for candle combustion, and that can lead to potential issues. They evaporate very fast, burn off very quickly. So at the very least, that usually means a weak scent, but it can also even be a fire hazard. So if you're going to make candles with essential oils, and there are lots of companies that do, you just have to be very, very careful. One, to make sure that they're safe and they're burning properly, but also just accept the fact that generally speaking, they're not going to have as strong a fragrance throw because the scent isn't going to last as long. They will evaporate quicker and burn off quicker. And so that's just part of using essential oils. They're not designed to go in candles. Whereas fragrance oils designed for candle making are specifically engineered to do so. So they're going to bind better to the wax. They're going to last longer. They're generally going to be stronger, and they're going to be more cost effective. Number 5, how much fragrance oil should I use in my candles? Well, most waxes can hold anywhere between 6 to 10%, some even more than that, as I mentioned before, and that's by weight. So let's say you're making a candle that is roughly 10 ounces of wax, which would be 280 grams of wax, and you're going to use a 10% fragrance load. Well, that would be either 1 ounce of fragrance or 28 grams of fragrance. So that's how you do it. It's just math. You take your amount of wax times the percentage of fragrance you're going to use, and that's how much you determine. If you're interested in more of the math on that and a couple different ways to do that, I've got a video that I'll try to remember to link. It's a great video, shows 2 different ways of kind of figuring out your math formulas. Just check out that video for more information on that. But long story short, most people use between 6 and 10%. I like to tell most people, depending on their wax, of course, start somewhere around 8% or so, 8 or 9%. And if you need a little bit more, like it's a lighter fragrance, add a little bit more. If it's a super strong fragrance, you can back it off. Some waxes, usually the soy waxes, coconut soy, you might need to add a little bit more than others. But that's something, again, you have to kind of determine for yourself. But if you want a good starting point, 8 to 9% is usually a good starting point. But you can ask people in the group again as well if you want some guidance. Number 6, why is my candle tunneling or burning unevenly? Again, this usually is a wicking issue. If the wick is too small, it's not going to generate enough heat, and it's not going to use enough of the wax as fuel, and so it's going to just usually burn out or tunnel straight down the middle of the candle. So you want a wick type and size that's going to generate enough heat to melt the layer of wax across the whole top of the candle. Use that melted wax as fuel to continue to feed the flame, and it's just a cycle. It's a combustion cycle, and that's how a candle essentially works. On larger jars, you often need more than one wick. And so if you have a candle where you're just having to get such a large wick and you're still not really getting the job done, that might be a time where you need to use 2 wicks or even 3 wicks. Depends on the size of the jar. And it depends on your wax. If you've got a wax that is really hard or a high melt point, you might need to get a hotter wick or add 2 or 3 wicks. As sort of a general rule, I like to say anything up to 3 inches or so in diameter, 1 wick should be plenty. Once you get in kind of that 3 1/4, 3 1/2 and larger, you're going to need at least 2 wicks most of the time. And once you're at that 4-inch or larger diameter, you're probably going to need 3 wicks even. It just kind of depends on the wax type you're using. And again, the groups will help you out. We can help you out as a good starting point. There is a tricky size whereas that kind of 3-inch range to 3¼ inch, where it's like almost kind of too small for 2 wicks, but too big for 1 wick. And so that can be a tough diameter to navigate, but you can usually figure it out. You've got options. Number 7, how long should my candle quote unquote cure before using or selling? Now, this is a topic all in itself, so I'm not going to go in a huge amount of detail here, but candles don't actually cure. Cure is it's a name that, it's a word that is stuck in the industry, but it's not really what's happening. Curing is a totally different scientific process, but it is a word that we use in the industry all the time. What we really mean, what candle makers really mean by curing a candle, it simply means giving the candle long enough to sit, solidify, and make sure the fragrance and the wax and the dye or anything else you're using is kind of all binded together. That's all that means. There's not an actual curing process going on. But the question, nevertheless, is how long should you allow that process to happen before you burn a candle or sell a candle? It's going to vary by the wax type. Some waxes cool, harden, and bind with the fragrance very quickly. Most of your paraffin waxes, in a day or two, they're completely ready to go. They're fully solidified. In fact, often much shorter than that. It also depends on the size of the candle. Soy waxes, on the other hand, soy can take days sometimes to really sort of settle down. Soy wax constantly is always like shifting and changing a little bit. And so you have to give certain waxes like soy a little bit more time to fully solidify. It'll look like on the outside surface that it's done and it's cooled and solid, but really in the inside, it's still kind of changing and shifting a little bit. So you give it a little longer. Now, how long that process takes, it varies by the specific type of wax you're using. There are hundreds of different soy options on the market. And so some, I would just say kind of go by what the manufacturer recommends. Honestly, most waxes are fully solidified in a couple days, including soy waxes. Give them a few days, and they're technically able to be used. Now, whether you want to give it a few extra days or even a week or two, like some wax manufacturers or wax suppliers recommend for soy wax, that's more of a just in case, just to be safe. Some notice that fragrance develops a little bit more over that time period as well. Again, that's a debatable topic, but I would at least give every candle a couple days before you're burning it or selling it. And if you're using one of these waxes like soy or a heavy soy blend, you're not going to hurt yourself by giving it that full week or so just to make sure that the candle's fully ready to go. Now, if you really want to go above and beyond, what I always recommend, especially new candle makers or anyone using new products, is the rule of 2. So I will test burn a candle after 2 days, and then I'll test burn it again after 2 weeks, and then I'll do one more after 2 months. And that's just to see, is everything I'm using really consistent? Am I getting very different results from 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 months? Is this a pretty consistent formula? If nothing else, it just tells you more about your product. Should I be waiting at least a couple weeks to sell this candle, or am I good to go after a few days? Number 8, at which temperature should I pour my wax? Well, each wax sort of has I don't want to say a sweet spot because it does vary a little bit. And if you're seeing the general pattern in most of these questions, and I could answer most of these with, it depends, but everyone hates that answer. So I'm doing my best to try to elaborate and explain. Different waxes have different pouring temperatures that tend to work a little bit better for it. Some waxes like to be poured very, very hot. A lot of your coconut waxes, palm waxes, some paraffin waxes, the hotter the better. Some soy waxes, the lower the better, but some soy waxes, the cooler the better. And then there's a ton of waxes that are somewhere in the middle. And by cooler, I'm talking on 125, 130 range, 140 range. Others like it around 200. And then most fall somewhere in the middle. But here's the thing. Where you make your candles, location geographically, or the different kind of setup in your homes or studios or warehouses or whatever you're working in, the humidity, the temperature, all of that can affect how your candles set up. So that is why there is no universal answer to this. Suppliers and wax manufacturers will often give you a good starting point. For example, they might tell you to pour around 150. But depending on where you're making your candles, it might be better for you to pour at 140 or 160. And that's why I hate giving specific answers like that when people ask, because you have to get some more information. I will give them a starting point, but I will say you might want to, in your environment, you might want to pour a few different, like 3 different candles, and document the 3 different temperatures that you use and see which one works best for you. Humidity, temperature, all of that can affect how the candle sets up. What you're ideally looking for is a candle that sets up nice and even, no major dips around the wick, smooth tops, and that's going to vary for everyone. especially if you're using different waxes. Generally speaking, the hotter you pour a candle, you'll get better adhesion to the wall of the candle, but you'll get more sinkholes because hot wax expands, and as it cools, it contracts. So you might end up with some sinkholes or other issues. Pouring a candle cooler will limit how much a wax contracts because it's not getting as hot or expanding as much to begin with. So you'll get less sinkholes usually, but it might cool too quickly where you get jump lines or cracks or poor jar adhesion. So again, you just have to find your own sweet spot, and you do that through testing. That's why at Black Tie Barn we harp on testing so much. Number 9, is it cheaper to make candles or buy them? Well, if you just want a couple candles, it's going to be cheaper for you to just go buy one. Now, of course, it depends on the kind of candle. If you go buy a luxury candle for $60 to $100 versus just a regular candle on a shelf, you can get anywhere from $5 to $15. Generally speaking, it's much cheaper to just go buy a candle. But once you start making several and you're in this longer and longer and you're buying your materials in bulk, your costs come significantly down and you can save a lot of money by making your own candles. Now, if you're talking about turning this into a business, that's a whole different animal. We're not really addressing that in this question because then it's your cost to make your candle, but you're going to turn around and mark those up and then sell it for a profit. Totally different ballgame. 1, 2, handful of candles, it's better just to go buy them. But if you enjoy crafting and you just enjoy the process, do it yourself. It's fun. If you're really only talking about a handful of candles, this really isn't a question about pricing. This is more a question of, do you want to make your own products? Do you enjoy doing the craft yourself? If so, do that. Who cares if it costs a little bit more? You're enjoying the process. Number 10, big question. Can I make money selling candles in 2025? Is it profitable? Well, absolutely. Tons of businesses are doing it. Tons of people are doing it. But you got to understand 3 really important aspects: testing and product development, pricing, and branding. And you got to have patience. So actually 4. Look, products and materials cost money. So you've got to learn how to get these products in the most cost-effective way possible. You got to learn how to use these products to make a candle, test that candle for performance and safety, then make your finished product. But then you got to figure out how to brand that product. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to make something fit your theme, your niche? Who are you trying to sell to? What's your brand, right? If you're just going to make random candles that have nothing to tie each other together, it's going to be hard to get an audience, hard to get a customer base. So you got to learn branding and marketing. And then, of course, you got to price your products. If you can do all that and learn as you go, keep growing, keep improving your skills, yes, absolutely, you can make money selling candles. You can make money pretty much selling anything these days if you understand business. And so this isn't really a candle making question. This is a candle business question. The handmade candle industry is thriving. It has been for decades. And it's not going anywhere, especially if you have a theme-based candle brand or you're selling like luxury or premium, something to stand out. You're looking at building value and building a customer base, and that is the way that you make a profit selling candles, just like pretty much with anything else. And we have a ton of videos on this channel to help you do that if you're looking for more information. All right, number 11, what equipment do I need to start making candles at home? Well, there's the very basics, which again, I have some videos that I will hopefully remember to link. And then as you scale and grow, those things change. Your equipment changes, your processes change. So you can start with a simple kitchen scale, a melting pot. I will link some in the description below, the ones that I would recommend getting started because they've got different sizes, different colors, and they're affordable. Scale, the melting pots, thermometer, pouring pitchers, of course your jars, your wax, your wicks, and your fragrance. Again, lots of resources on this channel to help you out with that. You don't need a lot to get started. You don't need a big studio space. It's a home craft that you can start easily in your kitchen. Now, as you scale and as you grow, if you want to turn this from a pure hobby into a small business, start doing craft shows and events, and then grow it until you have an e-commerce website, your materials, your equipment, your products, your processes are going to, of course, change. But you don't need a lot just to get started. Number 12, do I need insurance or a license to sell candles? Short answer, yes. You absolutely need to have insurance if you're going to sell your candles. If you're making candles for yourself at home, obviously you don't. But if you're making them for others or to sell especially, yes. A single fire claim without coverage can ruin or destroy your business before it even gets started. And that can really hurt you financially, personally as well. You're really looking for 2 main types of insurance that you'll get under one policy. That is general liability and product liability. As far as licensing permits, requirements, there is no single set of instructions for that because it depends on your state, your city, and locale. And then of course, anytime you're making products to sell, there are labeling requirements you have to follow, as well as warning labels need to be on all of your candles. And again, on this channel, I've got a video that talk about labeling requirements and things like that. So just basically remember that legal protection isn't optional. It's just good business. You really need to do it. The moment you decide to start selling a product of any kind, not just candles, and start a business, you want to have business insurance. All right, so if any of these questions that I just went through sound familiar, or you've asked yourself, you're not alone, Google it. You'll see how many other people are asking the same thing. Hopefully some of these answers helped you out in today's video. If you have a question I didn't cover, just ask it in the comments below, and I'll try to either respond directly in the comments or I'll use that for another video. And then lastly, again, if you are serious about candle making or even starting a candle business, check out blacktiebarn.com, our website. There's resources on there. There's materials to help you out. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Give it a thumbs up. That'll tell YouTube, hey, I like this content. Make sure I see more of it. Otherwise, we might release videos and you have no idea. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. And again, don't forget to check out Craftsy. The first 1,000 of you to sign up using the link in the description below will get a full year of premium membership for only $1.49. Great offer. Thanks to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video.